The deep dive is open. We are taking a sharp look at global conflict resolution today. But we're really trying to move beyond that classic image, of delegates signing documents in some grand hall in Geneva.
Right. We're going deeper.
We're going straight into the mechanisms, the philosophy, and now the technology that actually resolves these conflicts.
And it's everything from, civil wars that have gone on for decades to these incredibly complex commercial disputes between huge corporations.
That's right. And our stack of sources for this one is, well, it's broad.
It really is. It spans centuries of diplomatic practice all the way up to, cutting-edge digital policy.
So the mission for this deep dive is to give you a really clear map of the choices parties have when they decide to settle a dispute.
And how those choices get at these really deep-seated issues, things like relationships and trust.
And fundamentally, how all of this is being just completely turned on its head by the digital age.
Yeah, it's not just about applying force or writing treaties anymore. It's about process design.
Process design. I like that. We're looking at everything from these ancient diplomatic tools like good offices up to really sophisticated modern frameworks.
Things like conflict transformation.
Exactly, which is designed specifically for these messy, deep-rooted conflicts that happen within state borders.
We're trying to figure out what it takes to get not just, a ceasefire, but sustainable peace.
And that just requires a completely different way of thinking. Okay, so let's start with the foundations, the traditional stuff. We're talking International Dispute Settlement IDS and Alternative Dispute Resolution, ADR.
Right. And the cornerstone principle here, the one thing you have to get, is choice.
Absolute freedom.
Complete freedom. If you're in an international dispute, whether it's two governments or two big companies, you are free to pick almost any means of settlement you can agree on.
And that's where so much of the initial work goes, isn't it? Just deciding on the procedure.
Oh, absolutely. The choice of law, the choice of forum. You have teams of brilliant legal minds fighting over the process before they even touch the substance of the dispute.
So when we talk about methods like mediation or good offices, these aren't new ideas.
Not at all. Our sources show them in diplomatic and judicial use for, hundreds of years.
Wow.
Yeah, we're talking cases cited as far back as the early 1800s.
So what's the actual difference between them? Because they sound very similar.
They can blur in practice, for sure, but there is a technical distinction. The goal is always the same. Get the parties to an amiable settlement.
Okay.
Good offices, well, it's more of a facilitator role. A third party brings them to the table, maybe relays some messages.
So they're providing the space, the logistics.
Precisely. But with mediation, the third party takes a much more proactive role.
They're suggesting things.
Yeah, they might propose terms of a settlement or use their moral influence to sort of bridge the gap.
They're what the sources call a compositeur à l'amiable.
An amiable composer, I love that term. Their power isn't legal, it's not about enforcement, it's about moral influence.
Helping to tone down the excessive demands.
And guide the parties towards making concessions. It's about finding an equitable, lasting solution, which isn't always what you'd get by strictly following the letter of the law.
Which makes perfect sense when you think about why ADR is so popular today. It's not just that it's flexible and confidential.
No, there's a huge political context here, a history of, aversion.
An aversion to what? To the courts?
A deep aversion to international adjudication, yeah. If you look back at some of these huge politically explosive rulings...
Like the ICJ ruling on Nicaragua back in the 80s.
That's the classic example. That case scared a lot of nations off.
Why that one in particular? What was so charged about it?
It was all about sovereignty and intervention. The court found that the U.S. had violated international law by supporting the Contras.
Mining harbors.
Exactly. And for a state, that's not just a border dispute. That's a court ruling on its foreign policy, on its military actions.
Things they see as core national interests.
And when a ruling on something that sensitive is binding and final, the state that loses can see it as a major infringement on its sovereignty.
So ADR methods like mediation let you sidestep that whole minefield.
Right. The outcome isn't imposed on you. You have to agree to it. It just feels like a much safer space for these highly political settlements.
And this idea of a respected, neutral person using their moral standing to find a solution, that's not just a Western concept.
No, not at all. You brought up a fascinating example from Asian legal traditions.
Yeah, from the classical drama con. You see the sovereign Lord Iswarn acting as that perfect compositeur à l'amiable.
stepping in to reconcile the hero Rama and Queen Sita.
It just shows this idea of a trusted third party is, an ancient indigenous concept.
But the story of Melavarajay, I think, gets even deeper.
He was the conciliator.
Right. And he was known not just for being wise, but for his righteousness. His high moral quality. He had this rare quality called ubeka,
Which means equanimity.
perfect impartiality, a kind of mental balance. So he hears all the testimony and makes a wise decision. But his grandson, the king, rejects it.
Which leads to a curse.
Right. And the lesson there is twofold. First, the conciliator needs that incredible moral and spiritual discipline.
Sure.
But also, the parties are always free to say no. Their power is in their freedom to reject the outcome. It really shows how these processes are rooted in relationship and moral authority, not just written codes.
That idea of relationship being central is the perfect bridge to our next section. We're seeing this huge, what the sources call a paradigmatic shift. A shift away from just solving the immediate issue like who gets this piece of land towards focusing on restoring and rebuilding relationships.
Right, to create what's called sustainable peace. This is where we get into the Lederach framework.
And that framework sees today's conflicts, especially civil wars, as being fundamentally about relationships.
Exactly. They're relationship conflicts, not just resource conflicts. And so reconciliation becomes the absolute centerpiece. It's a social space, a place where all these conflicting needs can actually meet.
And for that space to work, it has to hold this incredible tension. Lederach calls them paradoxes.
Yeah, and they're so hard to manage because they pull in opposite directions.
Like truth and mercy.
That's the first one. Truth demands you acknowledge the full, painful history. You validate the loss. Mercy, on the other hand, is about letting go, a new beginning.
Forgiveness.
Right. And if you only focus on truth, you get stuck in grievance forever. But if you only focus on mercy, you're building peace on a foundation of denial.
You're walking a tightrope.
An extremely difficult tightrope. The same goes for the other two. Justice, meaning rights and restitution, has to coexist with peace, which is about interdependence and security.
And the need to talk about the painful past has to coexist with the need to build a shared future.
The second you start the conversation, you have to manage all those energies at once, which is why you have to engage the whole population.
Which brings us to the peace-building pyramid. We always seem to focus on level one, the top leaders.
That's the high-visibility, top-down approach. Political and military leaders signing ceasefires. And they're important, sure, because they have the power to implement things.
But if that's all you do,
the peace almost always collapses at the local level.
So then you have level three, the grassroots, the bottom-up approach.
Yeah, local leaders, everyday people, often just in survival mode. You see things like peace clubs, community health programs.
But the real sweet spot, the key to making it last, is level two.
The middle range leaders. This is where the real potential is.
Why them specifically? Who are we talking about?
NGO heads, academics, religious figures. They're the institutional glue.
How so?
Because they're connected vertically, they can talk to the top leaders, and they have credibility with the grassroots, and they're connected horizontally across the conflict lines through their professional networks.
They're the bridge.
They are the bridge. They run the problem-solving workshops, the training. Investing in level two is how you build an actual infrastructure for peace that can outlast any single political leader.
And this kind of holistic thinking also applies to how we even diagnose the conflict itself. The nested paradigm.
Right. You can't just look at the symptom, the thing people are fighting over right now.
The issue.
The issue is the symptom, the fight over a checkpoint, say. But that's happening in a subsystem.
A specific community. A school.
Or a pilot training center. But you have to connect that to the broader system.
The big picture stuff. Entrenched racism, economic problems, the arms trade.
And linking those three is the whole game. The Somali Youth Disarmament Project is a perfect example.
The issue is a young person have a gun and no future.
Right. The proposal was to offer vocational training tools in exchange for their weapons. That exchange happens at the subsystem level, the training center.
But the goal is systemic.
Exactly. You're trying to achieve structural transformation, build relationships, and reduce the power of armed groups. You use the subsystem to link an immediate need to a huge long-term goal.
And this focus on relationships and context is reflected in local wisdom, too. You mentioned the TNT of Central American peacemaking.
A brilliant way to put it. It's three concepts. The first is confianza.
Trust.
Trust, but more than that. It's trust built over a long time. In places where you can't trust the government or the police, confianza becomes the main currency. It's more important than any legal contract.
Okay, what's the second one?
Cuello. It literally means neck, but it really means your network, your connections.
Who you know.
Who you know to get things done. It's a recognition that reality runs on relationships. And the last one is coyuntura.
Timing.
The art of the possible. Knowing when the moment is right to act. All three together, the TNT, they show that peacebuilding isn't a checklist. It's a long-term strategic effort that depends on deep relational knowledge.
So we've come all the way from ancient conciliators to these complex structural peacebuilders. And now we hit the 21st century.
Right.
And a fundamentally human thing like mediation now has to operate in a totally digital world.
And the first principle is still do no harm, but the environment is, well, it's a minefield. Data breaches, monitoring, internet shutdowns.
Sabotage.
And the biggest challenge for mediators is this flow of weaponized information.
We have to be really clear on the terms here. There's a difference between misinformation and disinformation.
A vital distinction. Misinformation is false, but it's shared without bad intent. You know, your uncle sharing something on Facebook he thinks is true.
Right.
Disinformation is false information shared with the specific malicious goal of causing harm or deceiving people.
And that malicious intent gets amplified by technology. We're not just talking about individuals anymore. We're talking about trolls, bots.
And troll armies.
What are those exactly?
Well, bots are just automated accounts. But trolls are real humans, often hiding their identity, spreading disinformation. The troll armies are organized groups of them, set up for explicit political goals.
So they're like a new kind of actor in the conflict.
A new type of non-state actor, absolutely. They're designed to sow division and completely undermine any trust you're trying to build in a peace process, and they do it in real time.
So how does a mediator even deal with that? You can't invite a bot to the negotiating table.
You can't. It totally changes the game. You might be negotiating with the political leaders in one room, but there's a parallel digital war happening that's designed to wreck everything you're doing.
So mediators now have to analyze social media traffic as closely as they analyze negotiating positions.
They have to. But on the flip side, digital tools offer huge opportunities too. Let's start with conflict analysis.
Okay, what can we do now that we couldn't before?
We can do real-time monitoring and even predictive analysis, things that were science fiction a decade ago. We have social media analytics, GIS mapping, satellite imagery.
You mentioned the UN's catalog tool.
A great example. It can analyze radio broadcasts using speech recognition and pull in public data from Facebook and Twitter. So mediators aren't waiting for a report that's a week old. They can see things escalating as it happens.
And for engagement. The benefits seem pretty obvious. Safety, cost.
Hugely important for managing risk. You use secure, encrypted tools, Signal, Proton Mail, Telegram, and video conferencing.
Cuts down on travel costs.
It does, but more importantly, it reduces the physical security risks for everyone involved. And it lets you bypass intermediaries who might be corrupt.
And the third piece is inclusivity. This seems like a massive potential win.
It is. This is how you address level 3, the grassroots, in Lederach's pyramid. Digital tools just dramatically lower the cost and hassle of consulting with people.
Any good examples of this working?
The Libya National Conference process. They set up a website and an online questionnaire. They got 500,000 comments.
500,000.
And 1,700 completed questionnaires. It allowed for huge participation from people in dangerous or remote areas. Fiji's constitution-making process did something similar with email and Facebook.
But I see a huge risk here, too. All this digital communication relies on trust and security.
And it creates massive vulnerabilities. Information leaks can happen so easily with mobile tech, and that can instantly destroy the confianza, the trust you've spent months building.
And the infrastructure itself can be used as a weapon.
It can. A critical ISP, an internet service provider, can become a tool of political control. We saw it with Yemennet. They can just shut off information to entire regions right in the middle of a crucial negotiation.
And that gets us back to the exclusion problem.
Precisely. If you lean too hard on digital tools, you risk cutting out the very people you're trying to include, the ones without good internet or digital skills. You can accidentally just reinforce the power of the elites who are already connected.
Do no harm.
The mediator has to constantly check their digital choices against that principle.
So, after this whole journey, from ancient diplomatic practice to these big structural models and now into the chaos of the digital age, the core conclusion is still surprisingly simple.
That is.
Mediation is and always will be a fundamentally human task. It needs human skill, human character.
But the environment where that skill gets used has been changed forever. It's an environment of weaponized information and real-time data.
Which demands a new kind of discipline from the professionals.
It really does. Mediators, peacebuilders, they now need advanced skills in digital literacy and risk management. You have to be able to use the opportunities technology gives you.
While being incredibly careful to do no harm and protect the process.
Exactly. Protect the confidentiality and the integrity of what you're doing.
You know, it makes you think about the character traits needed.
Yeah.
The ancient conciliator, someone like MLARA, they needed equanimity, that eubeka, and this high moral standing to build trust. So what's the modern equivalent of that? What new psychological and ethical disciplines does a mediator today need to cultivate to stay impartial and trusted when they're operating in an environment of constant surveillance, weaponized information, and these real-time, emotionally charged data streams?
That's the question, isn't it? Answering that defines the skill set of the peace builder of tomorrow.